All right, everyone, we are going to start a few minutes early, 2 minutes early. Better to be 2 minutes early than 2 minutes late. And I'm going to also try to move this plant leaf because it's super distracting. Okay. Or not, we're just going to tune it out. So I'm so glad to have you here for our weekly office half hour. And I've got some questions that we've had that have come up related to time management. But before we get into that, I wanted to tell you a little bit. First of all, Happy Nurses Week. Happy Nurses Week. I hope that you are happy as a nurse. And if you're not, I hope that you do something about it. So that's the first thing I want to say, most important thing. But the other thing that I want to tell you about is something that happened to me recently with the American Nurses Association. So if you're a member of the American Nurses Association, you probably got this same email message late April with a subject line that said, "Don't let burnout ruin your career." Well, okay, easy enough. So I read the email and they've got some statistics in here. And this came from the president of the American Nurses Association, Jennifer Kennedy. And she cites some statistics. According to recent surveys, nearly 66% of nurses report feeling burned out, and another 21% report they are beginning to burn out. Well, we can all do math. That's very easy math. 66 plus 21 is 87. So 87 out of 100 nurses are somewhere on the spectrum of burnt out. Great. That sounds awesome. And also at the same time, we're hearing that nursing school admissions are down for the first time in years. So I wonder if that has anything to do with it. So yes, these statistics are concerning. So what is the American Nurses Association doing about it? They have a program, the Nurse Burnout Prevention Program, and it helps nurses to identify the signs of burnout, develop strategies to manage stress, all good things, all things that we should do, absolutely. But what made my blood boil about getting this email was that, first of all, I don't like the word burnout. I prefer the term moral injury, although I do find myself using, excuse me, using the word burnout to describe the phenomenon that we experience of just being at our wits' end with our jobs and with our profession. But I think moral injury is probably a much better term to use. But what drove me crazy was that it felt like victim blaming. It felt like the solution needed to come from the people who are already burnt out. The statistics that they led with talked about 87%. It would be easier, according to these statistics that they cite, easier to find a nurse who didn't feel burnt out, who wasn't ready to just pack it in and run for the hills, right? It would be a lot easier because that's 13% of the nurses. I mean, it would be harder to put it that way. It would be harder to find a nurse that wasn't just about freaking done with this profession. So I responded, and I knew that this is just, a form message or whatever that goes out to everybody on the mailing list, right? And I knew that this wasn't going to go back to the president. It was going to go to some mailbox and maybe no one would even see it. But I'm going to read it to you. So with all due respect, Dr. Kennedy, what are we doing to address the upstream factors that are causing burnout? Why is the answer always to encourage more resilience among nurses? Why are we not advocating for systemic changes that will require less resilience of nurses? What are we doing to prevent burnout? And promoting resilience feels like victim blaming. So I sent that along and figured, that'll be the end of it. I did hear back actually last evening from Steve Fox, who is the Vice President of Membership and Constituent Relations for the American Nurses Association. And he gave me his cell phone number as well. So that was a shock. Thanking me for my feedback. And he said, let me make this a little bit broader so I can read it. Your point is absolutely true. Just putting a Band-Aid on the wound does nothing to solve the problem. In fact, President Kennedy agrees with you and has gone public saying she wishes she could ban the word resilience from our statements because just asking nurses to bear all the stresses is not reasonable. In fact, we need to both seek improvements into the causes and treat the symptoms of the impact. The Burnout Prevention Program does only the latter, but ANA is also pushing hard to lead responses to the major causes, including staffing shortages and violence, among many others. He goes on a little bit more, but that was the gist of it. That message came in last night, and I have not yet had a chance to respond. But I wonder what you guys think. I wonder what your thoughts are on being told you need to be more resilient, because I think that's bullshit. I think that just becoming a nurse in the first place requires a lot of resilience. You are missing so many opportunities that other people are engaging in, right? When we go to school, we don't party as much, or if we do, we really pay for it because we have so much reading to do. We have so much classwork to do. We have so much homework. There is so much information that we have to cram into our heads and manage and be able to pull out without a moment's notice because somebody's life could be on the line. If you can do that and you can pass the NCLEX, you're resilient. And then if you can continue to work, you're already resilient. Then if you go back to school and you go to grad school because you want to do more for patients and you want to expand your scope of practice and you want to become a nurse practitioner, so you go back to school as an adult because it's grad school and you've been working for a while, you make all the sacrifices that go along with that to become a nurse practitioner, that's resilience. You've proven it. You already proved it when you passed the NCLEX, but here's even more resilience. Your well is even deeper. You are drawing from an even deeper source to show your resilience. And you make it through grad school and you maintain your average because of course we have to, right? Or we'll fail. You'll fail because you got an 80. You go through your clinical rotations. A lot of us work while we're still in school. You make those personal sacrifices. You miss family events. You miss vacations. You miss having a life. You miss so much of this stuff, but you do it because you love the profession. You do it because you love your patients. You do it because you want to help and you want to do what you can do to make things better as much as you can. So you sacrifice your time, you sacrifice yourself, you sacrifice your money, and you cross that finish line, and then you pass board. When you get board certified, you've proven your resilience again. Then you work, and you work in primary care, and you are pushed to the limit. You work with patients who are medically complex and who want to talk about 30 things in a 5-minute visit. I'm exaggerating, but only a little. And you work in situations where you're short-staffed. You work in situations where you have information and requests and demands on your time and your knowledge and your expertise coming at you from literally all directions at all times. And where some of us are compensated for the same work at a drastically different rate. I'm not saying that we should be compensated the same as physicians, but it is drastically different when the work is not always drastically different. The work, preparation, med school is not the same as NP school, but the work is very similar. And we keep showing up. A little over 3 years ago, this mystery virus showed up. We didn't know what the fuck it was. We didn't know how to deal with it. We didn't know what to expect from it. We didn't know how to protect ourselves from it. And we started showing up for work every day. We didn't know how it might impact our family. We didn't know how it might impact us. We didn't know how to take care of our patients, but we showed up. We didn't have PPE and we showed up. We kept showing up. And now they want to tell us, oh, hey, we know you're all, like burnt out, but just be more resilient. So I'm a little fired up about that. And I guess I kind of hope to get you guys fired up about that too. If in no other way than just to think about what is resilience? What does resilience mean for you? What do you need in order to be more resilient? And how can we help each other as a profession, as an industry? How can we help the ANA to know what they should really be doing that would be much, much better for us than giving us another task to learn how to be more resilient? I guess it's better than nothing, but I don't know if it's a whole lot better than nothing. So think about that. Think about what resilience means for you. Think about how resilient you've been and how anyone could dare to ask you to be more resilient. Wow. Wow. Okay, so I'm on my soapbox now. Let's talk about some specific things that relate to time management, that relate to charting. I am really hung up on I guess it's a fact. It's not so much a statistic, but a fact that I came across recently. So the average nurse practitioner, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average hourly compensation for nurse practitioners is $58 an hour. We talk a lot, especially for people who are either new grads or who are considering switching jobs. We talk about knowing our worth. Know your worth, know your worth. Everybody says that. And you should. But we tend to look at it at the beginning when we first start a job, and then it might fall off the radar. Maybe because we're so busy being resilient. I don't know. But we will negotiate the contract, we'll negotiate the salary, we'll negotiate other aspects of our compensation so that we feel like we're hitting some pretty arbitrary target, right? And we're probably going to shake out somewhere around $58 an hour because that is the average rate. And then we start working. And then we get in there and we start working, and we are probably pretty quickly realizing, oh, this might not be what I thought. This is going to take more out of me. This is going to require more. This is going to take over my life in ways that I didn't anticipate. Not necessarily that, you feel against it, you may or may not, but you didn't anticipate, right? And when that happens, usually the logical place that we go, the tool that we have in our toolkit that we use for this is just work more, right? I go home when the work is done. And if the work is done until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, then I'll go home until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Okay, well, you can definitely do that. I don't recommend it. If there's a patient emergency, different story. But just as a way of coping with your workload, I don't recommend that. And here's why. Here's how it ties back to knowing our worth. Knowing your worth is asking in advance. I would like you to pay me this much per hour or per year. But on the flip side of that, the reality that I think a lot of us in here are experiencing is having our worth kind of diluted, like a diluted solution, right? So if you are making $58 an hour and you work, normally you're supposed to be working 40 hours a week, but you stay an hour late, or maybe you stay a half an hour late every day, but you also come in a half an hour early. So it's an hour of extra time. And you do that every day, and it helps to keep you on track. And it's just a half an hour. It's just a half an hour at the beginning of the day, half an hour at the end of the day. Not a big deal. You're salaried, so it's all, it's all good. Doing that 5 days a week means that you are giving 5 hours or $300 worth of uncompensated time to your employer 1 week. Over the course of a month, that's going to turn into $1,200. Over the course of a year, that's going to turn into over $15,000 of uncompensated time that you're giving to your employer to do the work that you're supposed to be doing. I call that diluting your worth, diluting your compensation. When you negotiated for the salary, if they said, oh, but we're going to pay you for 40 hours, but you're really going to work 45, would you have been okay with that? Would you have renegotiated? Would you have asked for more money or asked for some other accommodation to kind of make things even out? I know I would have. That's a ton of money. And that's just 1 year. $15,000 in 1 year. That's just coming in half an hour early and staying half an hour late. I have definitely worked with clients who have had hours much more extreme than that. I have had clients who have been working 3 hours every day or 10 hours on the weekend to stay up to date, stay on track of their charting and their time management. I'm not going to try to do that math in my head right now. But if 1 hour every day comes out to $15,000 in a year, right? So I want you to think about that. Think about that concept, also resilience, also this concept of knowing our worth versus diluting our worth. That's a big one. And we don't talk about that as much. It's kind of like how we don't talk about the fact that primary care is pretty intense, right? We're all kind of, if you went to a family nurse practitioner program, you're kind of trained to go into primary care, and then you get in there, and a lot of times it's like, what? Oh my God, what happened? It's way more intense than we talk about. And there's a lot of scrambling that we have to do, and it's gotten worse in the last couple of years because people are not up to date with their care because of the pandemic, right? So we're just starting to try to dig out of that hole right now, and people are coming to us thicker or further along in their chronic conditions than they would have been 5 years ago. And then we're the ones left holding the bag, right? And when we are letting our compensation get diluted because of the way that we're working, that's really going to make it hard for us to be resilient. Okay, so let's get into a specific time management question. So I got the question, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. Somebody's seeing 18 to 20 patients a day and having a hard time getting charts closed and managing all the other tasks, right? I call that the side work of healthcare. So that's going to be reviewing prescriptions, resulting labs, responding to patient messages, and all that sort of stuff. Working on my breaks and taking a lot of work home. So what are the solutions there? Well, that is unfortunately a very, very common thing. So many of us experience that. And there's not really anything that we are typically taught in school. Maybe some schools actually get into some of this, or if you are lucky and you have a great preceptor who can do some of this stuff with you and show you some of what works for them. But there's not really in school a way that we're taught to deal with this. So it becomes this kind of like big surprise when we actually get out into the real world and we start practicing. So I think the first thing to do is to understand that you are not alone. Unfortunately, this is a very, very common thing in primary care because primary care can mean anything, right? I have a friend who works in ophthalmology, and it's like, well, yeah, there are different, diseases and conditions and reasons that people will come into ophthalmology, but it's still pretty much just the eye. And if it's not the eye, you're going to point them in another direction. So they have 15-minute visits. And I'm like, yeah, but do you really need more than 15 minutes, right? In primary care, it can be anything. It can be eye stuff. And there are some eye things that we might deal with, right? And if it's not too intense, or we might refer, or if there aren't resources, if we can't refer somebody locally, that might be something that we end up starting anyway. In primary care, it can be anything under the sun that comes to us that we either need to be able to deal with, or we need to know where to put these people. We need to keep them stable until they can get seen by the ophthalmologist because we think they have a corneal abrasion, right? So this person is asking about patient messages, refills, lab review, notes, all that sort of stuff. So one of the first things that I would do, two things that I would recommend. The first thing is to do a time audit, because having that objective information about how you're using your time, it's an investment to do it. It's not going to give you instant results, but nothing, especially nothing that is going to be lasting and sustainable. There are no shortcuts in time management. I'm sorry. And there's no like one lever that we can pull that's going to like make us hit the jackpot. It's about a lot of small wins and a lot of little things that go together and have that synergy and have that payoff in the long run. So the first thing that I would say is do a time audit. See where you're actually using your time, like a budget, right? If you were needing to make some budgetary changes, you would track your spending for a week, month, whatever the case may be, and see where your money is going, and then say, I'm going to cut back on this, this, and this, right? I'm going to divert it over here, whatever. You're going to do the same thing with your time because that's a budget too. That's also a finite resource. There's only so many hours in a day. Track everything you do for a week and as detailed as you can be. That's why I say it's an investment, because it's going to take a week to do it, and it's a commitment to actually writing it down, or it's going to actually slow you down. That's the reality too, is that It'll slow you down while you do it, but it's worth doing. And then go and look at it and look critically. Are there trends? Are there things that you're like, oh, I'm always doing this, or I'm never doing this, or every time I start doing this, I get interrupted, something like that? Are there trends that you're noticing? Are there opportunities that you're noticing where if you make a small shift, make a small change, you can get kind of a high yield in terms of results, right? In payoff. So do a time audit for 1 week. I would do it for 24 hours a day. Also, I would not do it just for your clinical day, definitely for your clinical day. But we also want to see where you are using your other time, right? Are you basically working, staying an hour late or so because you've got all this work that you need to do? Then maybe commute, go home, deal with whatever you're dealing with at home, get something to eat, and then like going to bed because you're exhausted and you're just like ready to drop, and then you sleep and you get up and you just do it all again. That's good information to have, good objective information. The other thing that I would do is all of the work that I call the side work of healthcare, which is everything that is not direct face-to-face patient time. So that's everything that's in your inbox, that's doing refills, all this kind of stuff. Everything else, you want to pick a lane when you're working on that stuff. Don't bounce from refills to reading hospital discharge notes to writing a couple of notes and responding to patient messages, because they are each really a different thought process and require a different skill set. And when you're writing your note, there's a lot of recall. What did the patient say? What did I see? But also, what was our plan? There is the medical decision making that goes into that as well. So that is all stuff that is very like high bandwidth. It's going to tie up a lot of your RAM, right, on your brain. So do that when you're ready to do your notes. Do your notes until all of your notes are done, or until you just can't handle doing any more notes. Then switch to another lane. So from there, you might switch to something like results, lab results. That is going to be a little bit different because you're going to be looking at what are these results? Was I expecting a normal result? Was I expecting an abnormal result? Was this part of a routine screening? Was this because of an issue? You know, what was I looking for? And you're going to have to do a little bit of investigation to kind of compare that back to the reason that you ordered the lab. And then from there, you're going to make your like assessment of the lab. It's normal and that's what I expected, and so therefore do this, or it's abnormal, but I was expecting it to be normal, and therefore do that. Whatever the case is, do all of those until you're finished. Then move over to patient messages, that sort of thing, because I don't know about you, but when I'm responding to patient messages, it's much different than if I had the same question come to me from a staff member. So if a patient had called and asked a question of the phone nurse and they sent the message to me and I responded to the phone nurse versus getting the message directly like through the portal from the patient, I think of it almost like needing to translate. Like I need to speak in a different language. I need to kind of say it in layperson's terms. You don't need to do that when you're talking to like, the phone nurse, because they get it, right? Like, because they're insiders, this is their industry. But with patients, we have to kind of adjust how we say it just for understanding. To me, that's a little draining, right? So that's something that if I'm doing that and I'm bouncing between these different pieces, I'm going to wear my battery out a lot faster. So I recommend picking a lane and sticking with it. And I guess the other piece that I would say that goes along with the time audit is if you do a time audit, and if you need help with a time audit, let me know. But if you do a time audit and you are really, really surprised by the results, like there are some shockers in there, talk to leadership about it. They may not really do much, or they might not be able to do much, but talk to them about it. Go on the record with it. Bring that time audit information. Because if they are ever going to make changes based on a request that you make, it is a lot easier for them to make those changes when you have objective data, like what you would get with a time audit. It also shows your commitment to solving the problem, right? You're not just saying something's wrong, we need to fix it. You've got data. You put the effort into getting a better understanding of what's going on. The reality is you're probably not the only one who's feeling this way, right? Or who's experiencing this. It could be. It could be just that you need a little bit more support, you need a little bit more training or whatever the case may be. Or it may be, no, there are some systemic changes that we need to address so that everybody who's experiencing this, which might be a handful of people or more, so that we can improve things for everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats. So that would be my recommendation there. And if that doesn't work, and if you try these things and you get a little improvement, but you don't get all the way across the finish line, you can reach out and we can work one-on-one. Let me know if you'd like to do that. But the other piece that might be part of the answer is if you are not able to get support either from your office or through working with a coach like me, the other thing that you might need to do is look for another job, because there's only so much we can do to try to change the setting that we're working in. I think it's great when we're able to do that, when we're able to affect positive change, but there's a part of me that's still cynical and says that's not always realistic, right? And sometimes we have to make the decision that's best for us, and sometimes that decision is going to mean going somewhere else. So that's the extreme. That's a worst case scenario, but it is an option. Definitely an option. Might not be the first option that you choose, right? But that's up to you. Your mileage may vary. So I am wishing you once again a happy Nurses Week. And I want you to stay tuned because I'm going to be doing a giveaway, right? So I'm going to be announcing it on the page. We'll do a giveaway of this. You can get your own copy of Secrets from the World's Most Productive Nurse Practitioner by me. See, hey. And I'll be announcing that later today, maybe tonight, but soon. So if you're seeing this, if you're with us now, or if you're seeing this on the replay on Tuesday night, stay tuned for that. Otherwise, you may just see it on the page. That's fine too. And I will see you next week. If you have questions, again, I love, love, love talking about this stuff. So send me a message and I will do what I can to answer your question and give you the guidance. And yeah, all right. Love having you guys here. Talk to you later. Bye.